Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Pardonable Podcast. I'm your host, David Lilly, and this is episode 48. And this week, I have an amazing guest. But before I get started, I want to tell you about the charity of the month. And so I've been doing a charity of the month here recently. And it's a cool time because I don't have a lot of advertisers. So this is a family friend of mine, and they recently adopted my buddy Lucas, and he's got some issues. He needs help with getting into his house, like accessibility for a ramp and things like that. And so that's the charity of the month, the Pardonable Charity of the Month. If you would go check it out. They're just looking to help make his life better. It's a good cause for great people, and it's really just to help his life a little bit easier for them. And it's difficult dealing with somebody who's not only newly adopted but handicapped as well. And so anyway, I just want to start off on that note. My guest this week is a guy I've been following on Twitter for quite some time. He runs in some of the groups that I run into, and one of the reasons why I want to have him on because he's a musician. He's a guitarist for a Common Crown, and he's also an athlete, and he also is a fellow podcaster for In Liberty and Health. And so, just want to introduce you to Kyle Matovcik. Did I say that right, Kyle?
Yeah, actually, yeah, you got it.
No way,
damn
dude.
Near spot on. Yeah, dude, most people normally can't get that.
Dude, I purposely didn't ask you before the podcast because I was like, I'm gonna give this a shot and see how well I do. I nailed it. That never happens.
Yeah, no, dude. Believe me, feelings mutual. I do the same thing all the time, and you're shooting the ship, before you start, and then all of a sudden you're like, did I nail this? And sometimes you hit it, sometimes you miss it, and when you miss it, you feel like a pretty big, yeah.
So what is that? Is that Polish? I don't have a clue. I'm just guessing. Now.
Yeah,
what is
actually, funny enough, yeah, I'm Polish.
Oh my god, I nailed that too.
Yeah, so my old man
Dude,
is
I'm
like
2
Polish.
for 0.
Yeah, my old man is a Polish and Czech, and then I believe my mom is like Italian Indian. So
That's
yeah.
fair. Indian, like Indian or Native American Indian?
I think Native American. I think
that's fair.
Yeah.
I think I got like a 16th of Native American, enough to where I could have got free college, but I was too stupid to cash in on that.
Well, you're doing better than Pocahontas.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Because she didn't go to college at all. That's all right. Like the moons and the stars. She got a movie deal. Like come on. Like I'm not going to.
You can talk about more of like a NPC politician than her, really. I mean, it's like just like your generic copy and pasta Democrat there, and she got a movie deal.
Oh, wait, we talking about Pocahontas or Elizabeth Warren? I forgot.
Elizabeth
Warren. Which one are we?
I was talking about Elizabeth Warren.
Not the historical or the Disney character, Elizabeth Warren. Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh man, my bad. I can't believe we're already screwing up this communication stuff already.
I don't think we screwed up at all. I think we just dove deep really quick. That's where I'm going to go with that. Hey man, you let's start off with a cool. This is something I'm always curious about when I talk to musicians and stuff like that. Man, when did you get started? When was like the first? And this is something I ask all my artists that come on. When was the first time you're like, yeah, I think I like music. Like I'm gonna fiddle around with guitar or whatever you start off. A lot of people start off with like the recorder in elementary, and they're like, that thing. And then how did you find your way to being a guitarist?
So like when I was a kid, Guitar Hero was real big, and that wasn't like the only reason, but I just always loved listening to stuff like Green Day, and I remember my dad got me like a Incubus CD, I think, and System of a Down and some other stuff that like this day I really don't like all that much, but it was just
really
like, yeah, it was kind of my foot in the door, if you will. And all my friends started playing guitar and stuff like that, so I was like, okay, well, that seems kind of cool. So I decided I think I want to do this. So my dad got me this little first act, and I remember I just sat there and like played with the strings and had no idea what I was doing. And then I think I broke almost every single string on it, and then I left it sit for like a year or something like that. And then my younger brother had got a guitar, and I wouldn't put it down. So my stepmom had complained and said that, well, you need him strings for that. And then same deal, picked it up, and I just started trying to play as much as I could. And I remember listening to like I want to say it was Death Magnetic by Metallica had just came out, and I was super super into it. But I'd been playing for a little bit before then. And that was like when I started just picking up tabs and started reading stuff. And, I remember I'd come home and I'd have like the Music Choice channel on Direct TV and listen to all
Yeah.
the heavy metal stuff. I remember hearing like Steel Panther, The
Okay.
Absence, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
all these kind of off the wall bands that nobody had heard of back then in like 2005 to 2009. And I'd go on to Direct TV and look at just random heavy metal music videos. I had no idea what I was listening to, but it all just looked cool and sounded cool. And then,
Yeah.
years and years later, I'm like looking back at all that stuff, I'm like, wow, all that stuff is just like absolute masterpieces. So,
Yeah.
I would say it was more of kind of like hard rock got me into it. And then when I found out about Pantera, Metallica, and kind of like the gods of metal that really just kicked it into overdrive, and that really kind of got me going down the path of playing music. So that's kind of like where I started, and where I am now is like a completely separate place. But yeah, I'd say that's probably a good start.
So it was metal. So you went straight off into metal.
Mhm.
Really? That's so. I used to play guitar, and I used to be in bands, but there were punk bands and mostly punk rock.
Yeah.
I went from a punk rock phase to an actual punk phase. But when I started, my sister, she was a musician. She would play guitar and stuff like that, and she introduced me to music. She was a few years ahead of me, but she I picked up all her old cassettes, and she was really into like like early '90s indie. So Matchbox 20 and Third Eye Blind. Third Eye Blind was my first favorite band of all time. Like the Untitled album. And then as I got, this was like when I was like 12 or 13, I was like, this is really good music. And so I got introduced to really good music right off the bat. And then I got her hand-me-down guitar. And she was like, well, I got a new one. Do you want this? And I was like, yeah. So right off the bat, except for I was too dumb to learn tabs. And so I knew chords. So I started writing my own stuff. And then it eventually, found my niche, and I really enjoyed punk rock, like the early 2000s. And then I found punk music, and then it was a weird spur with emo. I never dipped into metal. It was maybe it's a little too hardcore for me. I still like the happy-go-lucky. That punk rock thing never left me. So I'm still like Blink-182, like whiny. Let's drink some beers and jump off the roof, bro. Like that. That's kind of my. I think the inner child in me still lives in that category. But yeah, you went straight off into hardcore. What was your favorite band growing up? Like when you first started playing guitar, like who were you like, this is who I want to be? Who was that?
For me, it was definitely Dimebag Darrell. It took me a while to find Pantera, but yes, Dimebag Darrell was like my pinnacle. I wish I had something like close to me, but I can't really see it right here, but I have like a whole bunch of passes from different shows that I played. But there's like a little Dimebag Darrell necklace over there. But yeah, I when I grew up, I wanted to dye my my beard pink. Yeah, I wanted to dye my beard pink and have the real long hair, and get the the Dean from Hell and all that stuff. And I would just listen to Pantera CDs front to back, and just everything about Dime, the person he was, the way that he played. Just really, really resonated with me. And still to this day, I try to carry that ethos with me, and I fail at it quite often. But just kind of being the every guy. And honestly, I could say one of the main things I carry with me, and it's funny because my band's called A Common Crown. The one thing that definitely that Dime lives through me would be, me sharing shots of Crown and bottles of Crown with everybody. So all the outdoor festivals that we play, the first thing I do, I usually got a bottle of Crown on tap, and I go over and I see all the people I haven't seen in forever, give them a hug, and we both take a swig of the Crown Royal bottle, and gets passed around to all the friends. And yes, we did that 2022. But
how dare you? Where is your mask, by the way? You should be. It sounds like you're in a public room. You should wear your mask right now.
I should open up the windows. It's pretty cold here in Pennsylvania, but open up the windows to help ventilate it, right?
Yeah, you should. I'm in upstate New York, so your cold is nothing to my cold.
Fair.
Man, actually, I'm gonna be honest. It's funny that you say you went Dimebag Darrell was like your favorite. And when I was like, well, you went right off into heavy metal. That personification, it seems to be like that's part of you, because I've watched you on Twitter, and there's no pulling punches. Like you were very much like, here's my thoughts, and if you don't like them, deal. And I was like that. Now hearing about like your background and the music that you start off, and I was like, oh, it's all coming together now. it all makes sense. What do you think? Was that an upbringing thing? Like, were you raised around a family that was like, no, we're all or nothing, that kind of thing? Or
so to go into my childhood a little bit, my mom and dad split up when I was about 5 years old, and this is another thing that I've kicked the hornet's nest on a few times, but I won't go too hard here. But I would seek to arrange my future family in a way that I wasn't raised. And I do
Gotcha.
believe that it's very, very important that parents do the best for their children, because children don't have a choice in being brought into the world. So that's a whole separate tangent. But
Yeah.
so my mom and dad split up when I was about 5 years old. And I always kind of looked up to my dad, as I think most young boys kind of do, but I didn't spend a lot of time with him. And I just remember hearing stories of my dad doing all this wild and crazy stuff, like, towing the principal's car around, dropping cars in pools and picking up their buddies' cars with the tow truck. And I mean, this is back in like the 70s and 80s and
I
stuff
was going to say,
like
listening
that.
to Dimebag Daryl while he's doing it. Yeah.
Well, that was a little bit before him,
Yeah, a
but
little bit. But yeah.
my dad being kind of the rebel and telling me stories about dumping like this rat paint into classes and watching people fall out of the desks and just being an overall hellraiser, and that really
Yeah.
encouraged me. So I did fail. I had 4 years of middle school. It was only supposed to be 3, but I had 4 years. So
Dude, that's fun.
yeah, I was definitely a little bit of a
Overachiever. That sounds like
yes.
an overachiever. Like I want how many years of middle school? 3? We're gonna go for 4.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're just just trying to get as much as you can out of what you got.
Yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed it. But yeah, hearing those stories about my dad definitely encouraged me to go in that direction. So I was as the middle child in all my siblings, I was definitely the biggest hellraiser. But
Really?
it just kind of is what it is. Yeah, and definitely heavy metal
Yeah.
will encourage that too, because just the spirit of heavy metal, or at least what it means to me, is representing yourself in the most brazen way possible. Because there's nothing that just puts you on your ass like double bass drums and a distorted guitar and someone just screaming about the way that they feel. And I don't know, that drive, just talking about it brings up, makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. But that stuff is just the stuff that I lived for my entire life. And as a athlete as well, I train 4 days a week, and I can't imagine going to the gym, turning on Brad Paisley and think I'm gonna be able to pick up 500 pounds. No. But if you turn on 5 Minutes Alone or something, like I've been listening to like Bleed From Within, they're a metalcore band, I think from over in Europe somewhere. I could rip 400 pounds effortlessly to something like that. But if you tell me I got to listen to Upchurch or something like that, it's not happening.
You imagine squatting to like lost my truck in the back of the field. And you're like, oh, I got to get this. Yeah, I could see that. I could see why that would be an issue. Didn't really think about. So you're an athlete as well. You obviously have a podcast called In Liberty and Health. And so how do you think the music and the healthy living and the athlete thing tie in together? I mean, obviously, it almost seems like it's cylindrical, like the heavy metal, the being aggressive and being all full in, like what you just said. Like when you listen to metal, kind of puts you out, it puts in some fuel, like give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire.
Yeah.
Right? That's a kind of a classic lyric of being like, this is what it's about. It's about going. It's about being pushed forward, about moving forward at a high speed, at a high rate with a ton of torque, right? Like that's the essence of that. So it does seem to be involved in that. Did I just assume, or did I assume your gender, or no?
We're starting to sound like a biologist, but that's okay.
I don't know what a woman is because I'm not credentialed enough. But how do you feel about that, dude? Do you think they're all tied in together, like the heavy metal, that whole thing?
Yeah, honestly, I never really thought about it that way. But the intensity that I think people should exercise to, especially once you've become adapted, if you're passionate about it. And a lot of the research when it comes to muscle hypertrophy actually bears this out as well, that you have to be within like 2 to 3 reps of muscular failure, as in like you couldn't complete another rep if somebody, put a gun to your head or something like that, as in your muscles are literally no longer able to go. I don't think I could achieve that same intensity without heavy metal, but at the same time, heavy metal is really what drives you. And to bring it back to Dimebag Daryl, he said, I'm into heavy metal, that's the stuff that moves your soul. And I really do believe that, like, I'm a huge blues guy too, like Gary Moore, Albert King, BB King, love those guys. Melvin Taylor's another one. There's a name that was just on the tip of my tongue, but I completely forgot. But yeah, like I love all that stuff. But once again, there's nothing that just drives you, like listen to Pantera or some, maybe Morbid Angel, or, just some of the heavier stuff that, like I said, I kind of grew up on. But yeah, definitely the intensity between that working out, I definitely see having a tight relationship. And there are, like, I always think about Zach Wild when it comes to like bodybuilding
Okay.
and heavy metal.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you look up pictures of him, he's always been like just enormously jacked dude. And you know, I kind of envy him as well. He's like my number two. So number one's Diamond, the number two Zach.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I just look up to those guys because they seem like, and obviously I've never met them, but you know, it just seems like they're such charismatic, loving people that people just really admire and seem to be really, really good people. And as I said earlier, you know, I fail at it a lot, but I do hold them as kind of like North Stars musically and like personality wise.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting concept that you brought up, like because you just mentioned. I mean, those are kind of manly men, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know, and I'm not sure if we'll find out, but how you feel about Jordan Peterson, because I don't really know, but he does bring up the idea that a dangerous man is a man who's not dangerous and thinks he might be, or I actually don't really know what he says, but it's something similar along the idea, but like you need to be a monster. You just
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to tame that monster. And so when you're like Zach Walt, seems like a very kind individual, and you see this with like scary people. So I'm a tall guy, I got a beard, I'm kind of a bigger guy. I'm a bit of a teddy bear when you meet me in person, unless you have to really. I've got a patience. I've got a lot of patience, so you really have to mess with me to really irritate me. And I find that to be similar with a lot of people that are bigger and or at least have that presence, that strong presence. A bit of monsters, but we just know how to tame that monster enough to where that becomes somebody you want around. It's the people that I don't know. How do you know what I'm saying? Hopefully, I'm not just rambling now about some Jordan Peterson quote that I botched.
No, dude,
12,
I
12
get where
steps
you're
to being
going.
a monster. I don't know what it is. But yeah, you get
Yeah,
the point.
perhaps that'd be a good book for us. Somebody
That might be.
who might be a little bit more oriented towards you know, weightlifting or anger might be able to write 12 rules to being a monster. But no, I believe his quote was, "You should absolutely become a monster, but you should be able to tame that." Right?
Yeah. Okay. So
Because
that sounds a lot better. You did a lot better
right,
than I did. Yeah. There-
a weak man is in fact a very dangerous man because
yeah.
um,
Yes. Okay. That sounds a
to
lot
kind of
better.
elaborate on that a little bit more, when people give you an ultimatum, it's oftentimes not from a place of strength. It's from a place of weakness because they're telling you, I have no other option. So it's either this or that. They have no negotiating power, right?
Yeah.
And this is something where I actually think Jordan Peterson doesn't realize how right he is because, so like, I like Jordan Peterson for what he is, and I don't like him for what he's not. And my problem with Jordan Peterson isn't necessarily always him, but it's the fact that people project a lot of stuff onto him. They expect him to be this Giga Chad alpha libertarian dude, but he's just not that, and that's okay.
But he also doesn't. I mean, well, maybe he doesn't claim that. I've noticed that too, where people put a lot of.
He doesn't claim to be that way,
Yeah.
but
No.
once again, people project that onto him, and it's kind of wrong for them to do that. So this is where I think kind of like the manosphere guys, which when it comes to like the red pill and manosphere space, there's a
I totally
lot
forgot
of
there was a thing for that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
totally forgot.
There's a lot of bad and a lot of junk in there,
Yeah,
but
they
like
haven't let me in, by the way. I haven't. They haven't given me the password to get in that one. But yeah.
well, don't worry, you're not missing.
I'm not missing.
insane
Well, that's
amount.
maybe because I haven't asked.
Yeah,
Maybe that
well,
might be.
so like the guys that I typically say are like really, really good are like Rollo Tomasi and Rhinestone because they don't come out and say, hey, you know, this is this, you know, this is the way it is, and that's it.
Who's that? Repeat that again, because I don't know who this is.
Rollo Tomasi and Ryan Stone.
That sounds super familiar. Rollo Tomasi.
Yeah, I retweet him quite a bit on Twitter, and I think
might be
he's he does a lot of like live streams on I think it's like Sunday. His shows run anywhere from like 3 to like 5 hours, but there's a lot of really good information. He does like a lot of psychological research on like intersexual dynamics. So what I try to tell people when it comes to kind of like this masculinity stuff is that you want to listen to Jordan Peterson because he has a lot of good information there. And that's kind of like a good way to get your foot in the door about understanding responsibility and what that entails. But though you need to level up eventually and go to the guys like Rollo Tomasi and some of the Manosphere guys to kind of get where you understand the real world, how to apply, you know, the dynamics of, you know, interacting with women and, you know, pursuing, you know, basically your duties as a man, because the cards are stacked against men as it stands today, right? Because women have the force of the government behind them. You know, when you have an overwhelming majority of alimony cases being awarded to women over men, then you have to kind of leverage that and understand that. So basically the way that it's laid out is that the problem with Jordan Peterson and these traditionally conservative guys, which I don't have a problem with them being traditionally conservative. What I have a
Yeah.
problem with is this dynamic right here where they say you have to just take responsibility for responsibility's sake. But the problem is that men don't have the authority to affect that responsibility. So it's all responsibility, but you have no authority in said relationship. So what is, responsibility without authority? It's essentially slavery. And that's what we sign men up for these days.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, I see what
this
you're
is
saying.
why I think that it's very important to listen to some of the manosphere guys and take the good and leave the bad, but understand the whole dynamic and understand that, like, okay, so if you're going to engage a relationship, then you need to be responsible and you need to be wise, but you also need to understand that there's a desire dynamic, and you're going to want, who your partner to want you, right? Because the problem with
Yeah.
this whole responsibility trope is that they kind of throw out the genuine desire aspect, and then that can lead you down to very, very cynical paths, because we as men want certain things from, the women that we're with. And when you don't get those things, then once again, it's a great way to become cynical and to have a bad relationship. So this is where kind of like the red pill and manosphere guys come in great use, because they teach you, I don't even want to say teach, but they kind of help you understand what it is to achieve this genuine desire dynamic, because that's very, very important. Because, once again, there's this, alpha seed and beta need, to put it politely. So basically, where women want the long-term provisioning, and they also want, the hot guy in the foam cannon party in Cancun.
Yeah.
He was hot. And one thing led to another. So there is a balance.
Yeah, they
there.
also want to
Yeah.
choose where to eat, but they can't figure out where to eat either. So it's just a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's a pretty big rabbit hole, and I know that's a whole tangent I went on there. But yeah,
I'm with you on that one.
Good.
Yeah, I'm following. I want to because you said something, and I think we should let's sit, because this is something I haven't really thought too much about. I have I think a little bit insight, but the responsibility for responsibility's sake, which kind of puts you as a slavery. Can you explain? Because I've had conversations with guys before. They're like, well, there's no room for chivalry anymore. And I'm like, here's my problem. I've been married for a long time. I married my high school sweetheart, so we've been together. So I'm not in the. I don't know the dating thing. Like I got, and I can pull that card every time. And we're like, well, how do you feel about Tinder? Like, well, it sounds like an awful deal, but I'm not a Gen X or whatever. I'm not in college right now. Like, I've settled my cards way early on. But people are talking about, well, chivalry is dead, because you can't. If you open the door, you get called a name. Or you get disrespected. Maybe they don't even say thank you for opening the door. And my response, and tell me what you think, honest, what you think about this. I said, to hell with them. Open the door anyway. Because the reality that sure, the responsibility for responsibility's sake, and that maybe you're a slave, or maybe you're voluntarily doing something because you want to alter the world around you. So I've had this conversation with a buddy of mine. He's like, well, if you open the door and they don't say, they're just disrespecting. Maybe they even get mad at you for opening the door. To hell with them. This is how I'm raised, and this is the world I'm going to live in. And if I do this and they get mad, okay, I'm sorry. Well, I'm still going to open the door for the next person too. I'm going to continuously forge this path, because chivalry is dead or whatever. Well, I'm going to keep it alive as long as I can. And regardless of whether or not you like it or not, or you get upset, or you don't say thank you, what's wrong with just, this is the world I want to live in. I want to be polite. I want to open doors for people in general, not just women, elderly. Literally the guy that's younger than me, I open doors. I'm just an open door guy. How do you feel about that? And that's a responsibility for my sake. Is that a slavery, do you think? Do you think I'm doing it because it's a slavery thing? Not quote unquote slave. Let's not dip into that one yet. You know what? This whole thing is like the Holocaust. It's just not.
Let's just put the pedal to the metal. Screw it.
Let's pull the Gina Carano back. We'll pull her back from the break. Let's not go that part. But I think I know what you're saying. I hate for men to fall into like, be a good man regardless of what everyone says. But I'm kind of vouching for that, dude. I'm kind of going like, you know what? Maybe you need to be a good man for the good man's sake, because it's worth it. What do you think? Is that all? How's the manosphere? I'm sorry, I'm ranting again. Go ahead.
No, dude, that's okay. So I do believe you should do that. So like some of the manosphere guys would they almost try to come to the table with this equal mindset, which I think is setting people up for failure, because there are just natural hierarchies. You're never going to get rid of them.
Let's stop real quick. Let's do definitions, because even I'm like manosphere guys. Can you give me like a small synopsis? Manosphere, is that like that's not Groiper, is it? Is that the Groiper thing? I don't know, dude. You're talking to
No,
an
that's okay.
idiot
Yeah,
here. Okay.
yeah. Oh, dude, you're perfectly fine. So, like the Manosphere guys, I would consider more of like the pickup artists,
Like
the
the Andrew
original.
Tates.
Yeah, I would
No?
include him in
Okay.
there, but
Okay.
he's not kind of somebody that I would tell people to go listen to and take a lot of his advice. I would tell them like, hey, listen to him. You know, he's entertaining, but I wouldn't take everything he says to heart.
Yeah. He'll tell you how
S
to get arrested in Romania real quick.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, or traffic people via the
or
internet.
traffic that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I think about the Manosphere, I think about like I said, Rollo Tomasi and Rhinestone, where basically
Okay.
it's a group of men who are trading notes on intersexual dynamics to help
Okay.
understand the game and understand handling women in the 21st century, because
Gotcha.
50, 60 years ago things were completely different, and nowadays
For
that
sure.
women have exposure to social media, and it's not like all women are monoliths, right? But this is just, the way that we have to kind of come to understand this is that men want unlimited access to unlimited sexuality, right? That's why there's so much porn on the internet, because there's such a demand for it. Men want this, so they're going to seek it out whatever way possible. Now,
Yeah.
once again, I don't think it's healthy, but at the same time, this is a natural drive. Like people think, oh, well, we could just ban porn or something like that. Well, men are going to find an outlet no matter what, because this is part of our innate wiring, right?
Yeah, so I would assume, not to jump in, I would assume
Yeah, that's okay.
cavemen probably really enjoyed cave drawings. I'm sure that's the reason why those were there. They're like, hey,
Yeah.
they're not around. What do we do? Well,
Yeah.
Ooga Booga over here drew a nice set, and so
Yeah.
let's be honest, it's a bit of an animalistic concept. They're going to
Mhm.
be drawn towards that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, interrupt with the.
No, dude, you're good. You're good. That's a good plug there as well. But and women are looking for basically unlimited access to resources. So
Okay,
they want the man that they genuinely desire, but they also want a long-term partner.
for
Well,
sure. Yeah.
now the thing is that the dating game set up so that women have so much access to attention, which in their mind is resources, and there's so many social
Oh, wow.
conventions and tropes that surround social dynamics with women, where now stepdads are the greatest people in the world because they're stepping up where that piece of garbage man left. But okay, well, what was the incentive for him to leave, and why are you with a man that would do that to you? Like, nobody stops and asks those questions. We never put it back on women, because ultimately at the end of the day, women do have to decide to let men in, right? And now obviously we're not talking about situations of non-consensual sex, that's a completely different story, but women ultimately are the gatekeepers at the end of the day, because they're the ones that get to decide if you get to get the goods, right? So
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
we go on throughout the 21st century, men need to learn how to adapt to the game as it is now. So they need to understand body language and the way that now text game, and I mean, not like people don't, to have people's number isn't like anything at all. So
Yeah.
do you know what the
So
number one
weird.
dating app in the world is right now?
I'm gonna say Tinder. That would be.
No, it's Instagram.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So
Really? Okay.
what do you think women do when they're on Instagram and they're posting all these pictures of themselves? They're advertising, right? And once again, this isn't to
Okay.
say that all
Yeah.
women are monoliths, but they're posting this out there to see what eyes are on there. And it is kind of funny to listen to like Fresh and Fit, which is kind of like another.
Oh yeah, I heard them.
It's
I
a
haven't
complete,
listened to their show, but
it's a
I've
complete
heard them
total
before.
just red meat kind of show where it's just blood sport for blood sport's
Would that be
sake.
Manosphere? Is that Manosphere?
They're definitely considered Manosphere, but they wouldn't be the kind of guys that I would like take any advice to heart to. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I follow.
Yeah, it's the same deal with Andrew Tate.
You can.
You can listen to these guys and they're entertaining, but I just wouldn't take what they say to the bank. Rollo Tomasi and Rhinestone are like the two guys that I would take what they say to the bank.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically they always joke about women deleting their Instagrams if they get boyfriends and they never want to do it. Well, in my mind and in most other men's minds, it's kind of like, well, you're pulling yourself off the market, right? Like
Okay,
part
I
of
see
the
what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. So part of the reason why I'm with my wife now, and this is a complete and total stupid oversimplification, but
Okay.
she doesn't beg for other men's attention, right? And I've been with women before who do, and the shit always drove me nuts. And it's not because there's anything necessarily wrong with me. I'm a jealous person, but I mean, this is kind of like innately wired into men, is that we want to know that our offspring's going to go to the next generation. We want to know that the kid is ours. So when women are attracting attention of other men, or they're demanding attention from other men, we begin to question if their loyalty is actually to us. So when you put it on women to say like, hey, would you delete your Instagram for your boyfriend? And they say no, then basically that's because they're not ready to take themselves off the market. Right.
Mm.
Does
Okay.
that kind of
Yeah,
make
no, no,
sense?
I'm definitely tracking. I'm just in my
Yeah.
head. I'm parsing this out, and then
Yeah.
also crying a little bit inside for all the younger guys out there.
Yes.
'Cause
Yes. Believe me, I do all the time as well.
I got married way long before Instagram.
Mhm.
And even then, my wife doesn't have one. She's just
Yeah.
not a social media person.
Right.
Because I lock her. No, I'm just joking. I don't lock her around. That almost sounded bad now that I think about it. But yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for the kids nowadays because it does seem kind of odd. And I've actually haven't talked about this on the podcast, but I'm pretty vocal about it. Well, no, actually, I'm not very vocal about it anywhere unless I'm prompted to be.
Mhm.
But when it comes back to the idea, you brought up a few things. So I'm not retracting, but going back a little bit. You talked about like,
Sure.
the women are the gatekeepers. Now, obviously, throughout the entire idea of history and
Mhm.
Cleopatra, Eleanor Troy, that they're kind of they might actually be the people that cause wars.
Mhm.
Not to say that they're instigating it, but
Yeah.
well, anyway, so they are the gatekeepers, and then you have
Mhm.
like third wave feminism, and I remember coming up as a young man in the late 80s, early 90s, and my dad would tell me about the 70s, and because that's when he grew up, and he'd be like, there was a whole hippie movement. And he's a minister, so he's like, I was part of the Jesus
Mhm.
freak movement, which was like the weird hippie, but not. They
Yeah.
were like, we're not all this sexual revolution thing. We like to gather around, play hacky sack, and read our Bibles. It worked out for him, so I was fine with that. But the idea that free love thing, like everybody, who cares about relationships? And then now, if you look back, you're like, that was a trap set by men, right? That whole third
Mhm.
wave feminism was literally it had to be written by a man. Like, if you
Mhm.
were to think about this as series like Game of Thrones, when you got to that like episode, you're like, all right, season 3 of feminism, who wrote this? Oh, obviously that was a dude, because it was like, you know what, women, the one thing that is sacred to you, the one power play that you have, just give it up, it'll
Mhm.
work out great. And you look back and be like, well, this seemed to be an awful move, and everything that seemed to be empowering about it just made you more like a man.
Mhm.
Something that you give away, and that's just not how women are built. And I feel bad because it's not as if people knew. I mean, I guess you could have read the Bible or something, but it's as if you didn't know. You're
Mhm.
like, what about this whole I mean, going back to Jordan Peterson, monogamy. What an
Mhm.
outdated garbage thing. But now we're circling back, going like, well, this might actually benefited both individuals, not just men,
Mhm.
but women together. Um,
Yeah.
and it's almost it sucks because it's a lot of people's lives got ruined along the way. But it's also weird to circle back and be like, you remember that thing that we thought was dumb? Well, it's coming back around to be like, well, this might be the thing that actually was beneficial.
Mhm.
And if it's circular like that, then you have to think in 60 years they're going to have another movement of free love, and everybody just give everything
Mhm.
away, and there's no sacrednicity to sex or relationships or anything like
Yeah.
that. And then we're going to see this all over again. And so I think that that's where how do you feel about that? Is there anything you would object to that one?
No, no,
Or does
no.
that seem to fall in line?
The one thing that's interesting to me, to bring it back to Jordan Peterson again, would be how he kind of lays out the difference between political people's opinions is borders, and
Yeah,
the idea of like order and chaos. So when you think about polygamous societies, they do tend to be a lot more chaotic because you have now blurred the lines of order, right? Where in my relationship with my wife, it's just her and I, and her and I agreed on
yeah.
very, very strict rules early on, like, hey, no infidelity. We want kids.
That
We want.
that has to be a normal rule, right? Do you
Mhm.
think people talk about that? Like, hey, now that we're married, we should talk about not sleeping with other people. Is that a thing? Tell me
Um,
that's
t-
not a thing now.
in today's world now, kind of what happens is that women will share a more dominant man, the man that they genuinely desire, and then sometimes maybe even lesser men will be willing to share multiple women, like, or so, like, kind of what I've seen. This has been very, very surprising for me, because I always thought people were like very, very monogamous, but it's really not the case, where people are totally good with swinging. Like this shit's kind of weird to me, man. Like I didn't think it
Yeah.
was, I really didn't think it was a thing, but I think what
Yeah.
happens now is that a lot of men are willing to sacrifice the loyalty of one woman if she's attractive enough. And kind of let her go sleep around, as long as she kind of comes home to him at the end of the day. Which, I mean, if that's a sacrifice you're willing to make, I think that's a dumb sacrifice, but that's not a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And I
Well,
do think that if you plan to have a family, then that's detrimental to the health of your family,
yeah.
because
Yeah, I would say so.
children do require both parents, and to have all these different figures coming in and out, and especially having like this kind of odd power dynamic with strangers, I don't think is a healthy place for children, or really for even grown adults. I don't think it's a healthy thing at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have you ever watched Arrested Development?
No.
It's a great show.
Mm.
It's phenomenal. I mean, this is early 2000s when it came
Yeah.
out, but there's a character on that. He's married to to a woman, and they're having marriage problems.
Mm.
He's obviously gay. That's the whole joke about it. And they're having marriage because he doesn't want to be intimate. Neither one of them want to be intimate. And
Yeah.
he's a therapist, and he's like, well, there's this thing where couples who are having marriage problems, that they enter into, what if we date other people? And she goes, well, does that work for married couples? He was like, no, somehow they delude themselves, but it never works.
Mm.
But for us, it actually might. And so he actually goes in. It's this weird
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance of just suspending your belief that this thing that never works for anything else might actually work for us. And
Mm.
it's kind of the tale oldest time, is sometimes we always think we're smarter than the reality we live in.
Mhm.
And I think that might be because reality is kind of difficult, and relationships are difficult. Um,
Mhm.
and that's again, that's a I didn't realize we were going to talk about this today. This is not even on my
Oh
peer
yeah,
view, but
dude,
I
that's
love it,
good.
dude. I've been
Yeah.
thinking about the culture war a lot lately, and especially with the podcast. Like, well, I talk to artists all the time, and one of the things I like for artists to do is explore, like, talk to them why they do what they're doing, because it's a weird art, especially guitarists nowadays, and the way the internet's moved and the way culture has moved in general. Just to find an artist who's a little bit more outspoken about something other than just their art.
Mhm.
Um, Not to side rail on this, but I was thinking about
Yeah.
that lately, as being like, well, I'm an artist, like I paint and I do stuff like that all
Mhm.
the time, but I'm not super outspoken about who I am or my thoughts behind it, especially when it comes to like chivalry, or like the way I treat my wife, or the way I think about the world. But the world's kind of collapsing around us. And so it makes me think, like, well,
Yeah.
how often can I play with my watercolors and go, well, here's another Spider-Man. I hope World War III doesn't start today.
Mhm.
And then I go, well, what am I doing with my art? And so I think about that. How often do you think about like what you do mixed in with like what the culture? Because you obviously are playing into the, like, you spend time thinking about the cultures. Right? You obviously are. You said you were married, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I say, so you're thinking about the manosphere and how the next generation's coming up. And I've never thought about that till recently. Been like, well, what about the next gen? What artists are we going to have coming up now? And what are they going to be? They're probably going to be, dude. They're probably going to be iconographs. They're all the artists coming up are going to just paint pictures of Jesus because it's so bad. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, what? So how do you feel about that, man?
Um, I am kind of concerned for this sharp bounce back, and I've been very, very outspoken about how I feel the culture war is going to go, because I know how people can get when it comes to like the satanic panic stuff. And I do have a great bit of sympathy for religious people. Actually, one of my friends actually sent me two Orthodox Christian books. I haven't got to read them yet, but I've been an agnostic my entire life. But just the conversations I've had with some of these people who consider themselves Orthodox Christians, they're just absolutely fantastic people. So it's made me kind of reconsider my position. But that being said, when I see people throwing out that basically, it's like another thing of, everybody that disagrees with me is satanic, everybody that disagrees with me is a Nazi, everybody that disagrees with me is a leftist. When I see people go into these binaries, it just drives me nuts, because I do consider myself to be a truth seeker, and I do believe that misinformation does hurt people. But when it comes to like the next generation of artists, I feel like there's just so much out there, and I don't see social media as like an inherent bad, like a lot of people do. Everybody says, "Oh, this is a problem with social media." Well, social media is just the tool, and this is what I think a lot of people miss when they talk about this: is that like everything that we do, we would do, whether we had the tools that we have today or not, they would just represent, or they would, manifest in different ways. So like when you see people saying, when you see these videos of these crazy, let's say pro-choice advocates in the streets protesting, that would be you or me if it was a given or a certain situation where we felt passionate enough that we wanted to be heard. We would do the exact same stuff, and that is a harrowing thing for people to consider, that would be them given certain circumstances. So I know I'm a little bit all over the place here, but I don't know
No,
what to think
you're
about the
fine,
next
dude.
generations coming up.
I was thinking about that too. It's cool that you're got some Orthodox books. So I was raised a Christian, not Orthodox, but I've definitely studied. That stuff interested me early on, so I read a lot of Orthodox books. One of the books that I read was the Philokalia, which is Orthodox, like early Desert Father stuff.
Okay.
And I think that's a good well-roundedness. I mean, a lot of my friends. I mean, I went through an atheistic season of my life, and then like an agnostic thing too. But it does make me think about, like, I mean, even when I became a Christian again, like in my early 20s, it wasn't the cool thing by any means. I mean, maybe kind of in a weird section and being like, well, this is definitely not what you do in your early 20s. Like, I mean, it was never really cool in the first place. But I do think about what the, like, I was just having, let me break this down. So I was just having a conversation with another artist, a friend of mine, on the podcast, and I brought up the AI thing at the end. And I talked to him a little bit, and he was pretty white-pilled about it. He was like, well, even if you can type in, like, make this picture, like paint the oil of, this thing, and make it look like it. And that was a big movement with the artists. They were like against AI because it's basically stealing jobs. It's like the same thing for automation for truck drivers. And like, well, if the trucks can drive themselves, they're going to have to learn to code or whatever. Well, now artists are going to have to learn to code because anybody can take whatever they want, type it into Chat GPT or whatever. And then now they have a gorgeous piece of art that was made by a computer. And he was like, well, I don't think artists are going to be around. And I said, well, the thing that I worry about in that whole sentence is if I was 8 years old, like say when I started drawing, and I knew I could just type in Spider-Man swinging from this with this color, and it printed it out like on a printer or whatever. There's no incentivization to actually want to draw. And so you lose an entire generation of artists that could come up because of technology or whatever the new thing is. And I think about that, like, I know some younger people that my friends' kids, and they're coming up, and it was like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And he's like, I want to be a YouTube star. I want to play Fortnite on YouTube. And I was like, younger, I never had that. And it makes me, I mean, I sound like a boomer, dude. I sound like a freaking boomer. But I'm like, this is making me nervous. Look at these youngsters out here listening to their rock music. But I'm seriously going like, well, what about being creative? Like, I know you want to buy that new Fortnite skin, but what about making a Fortnite? I don't know. I worry about that stuff. And then it makes me wonder about like the whole Christianity thing when they're culture war, because I still see it coming back around again. And even people who are agnostic or people who aren't religious, you can look at the culture and be like, I get it. You could say, maybe drag shows are a form of art. I've been to a drag show before, and I was like, oh, I get this. I understand why it's a form of art. But to go like, well, we should probably not have kids there.
Right.
You're like, well, now you sound like a Christian bigot. Like, no, my agnostic atheist friends think this is a bad idea too. So are we just circling back to like Sharia law? Do we have to invoke this now to keep kids out of drag show? It's almost as if we're there's this Kyle, dude, there's this saying that I grew up with, and there it says all the scientists and mathematicians, they're all climbing up a mountain of knowledge. They're all trying to get the new thing. The new cliff is there, like, oh, quantum mechanics, we got to find it. And then they finally get to the peak of knowledge, and at the very top of the mountain, there's like 3 theologians sitting up there being like, yeah, we told you this, like at the bottom of the mountain. It's the same thing. Like, it's literally the same thing. We've been here for so long, and you guys went the long way around. And I feel like that, I mean, not to say all religions are the same, but a lot of the things we're dealing with cultural have a lot of religious undertones of being like, we told you this was bad. Like, I mean, maybe we didn't go about the right way. We just said, hey, this is bad, to stay away from it. But now we're having to explain it. That's weird, right? Tell me I'm not a weirdo. Did I just
No,
rant on something that makes no sense? Because I was like,
no, you're good. You're good. So I want to start on the AI stuff, and then we kind of work our way to the religious stuff. The AI stuff, I gotta say, I'm pretty optimistic about it too. For the sole reason that when I was recording my band's 4 song EP, I do have a female singer, and we don't
okay,
like brazenly brag about having a female singer.
well,
She's
why
just
would you? No,
yeah. But there's so many
yeah,
bands that just use that as their gimmick, but that's not us.
yeah,
And my singer Jen is absolutely fantastic. But a perfect example of this, I remember um, the audio engineer was sitting there kind of trying to like pitch correct her voice, and
yeah,
I was just talking about this the other day on the podcast. He stopped the recording or stopped like trying to pitch correct it, and he looks over to her and he says, "Look, I could sit here and fuck with this all day, but you're so spot on that I like just can't do anything with this." The
yeah,
beautiful part about that is that she worked for that, right?
yeah,
This is
yeah,
because
yeah.
Jen, my singer, has sang for so long, and that when she goes in the studio, she doesn't play around, and she's willing to put in the hours, she's
That's it.
willing to put in the time to make sure that whatever she does is done right. So, one, you're not going to be able to duplicate that with the AI. The
No,
way that Dimebag Daryl has the smooth legato and then these wicked upstrokes, you're never going to be able to duplicate that. The way that Dave McClain on 2003 Through the Ashes of Empires by Machine Head plays Imperium, the way that I remember just watching videos of it, it blows my freaking mind. There's not a drum machine that can do that.
yeah,
Rob Flynn's vocals, Phil Anselmo's vocals, you name it. There will never be an AI bot that can get that same human element that they had in those recordings. So, really, I think this may separate the wheat from the chaff. But if not, then I even think about this in like bodybuilder terms, where like I'll never be Ronnie Coleman, right? I mean, I'm
yeah.
probably, I don't want to say near my genetic limit, but eke out most of your gains when you start working out within your first like year or two, right? Well, I've been
Yeah.
working out for 10 years, so the amount of muscle I'm going to gain is going to be infinitesimally small
Okay.
compared to what it was 10 years ago when I first started
Well,
working
don't
out.
sell yourself short, man.
Yeah, but the point is that I should that should be all the more reason to tell you, hey, well, you should definitely try as hard as you can to see what your potential is in
Yeah.
anything you do. So don't be scared of some freaking computer and some zeros and ones that may sound good. They're never gonna have that same human element that you can put in there.
Okay. Well, hold on. We're gonna full circle this around because
Sure.
for sure, I totally agree with what you're saying. But does that not stop, a 10-year-old who was gonna pick up a guitar and go, I have to now the bar's set here because yeah, for sure it's not the same as all the other people above it who've worked for years. But if I'm going to start a garage band, do I have to get to there before be able to play shows next to the DJ who just put a arpeggiator and
Mhm.
AI chatted the song that I tried to write that was better than mine? And do you see what I'm saying? Does that set the bar so high that people go, "What's the point of trying anymore?" And this actually goes back to responsibility for responsibility's sake. Being
Mhm.
like, well, then what's the goal here? Are we trying to do something like, are we trying to be men who are chivalrous because we're looking for a response? Or are we doing it because it's out of principle? And this is
Mhm.
something this is why I lean in so hard into libertarianism, because sometimes people are like, well, the utopia is
Mhm.
socialism, or the utopia is whatever Republicans want. I don't know what that is. But the utopian is this, and if we can get there, but libertarians are always standing back like, no, the utopian, there is no utopia. It's just be responsible for what you are according to principles that are standpoint. And I think that goes back to AI, to guitar players looking, a 10-year-old who's picking up a guitar for the first time, going like, I'm never going to compete for an AI unless I work at this for 40 years. Maybe I'll be somewhat lower than Dimebag Daryl and above the AI, but the amount of us are going to be such a small percentage. What's the point of even picking this up? I should learn to code. I'll be able to create an AI that maybe I'll make some money off. But why not play guitar for guitar's sake? What if it affects the soul? What if it changes the way you look at life because you picked up a guitar instead of worried about AI is going to take your job? And that's when I go back to the responsibility. Sometimes I mean, do you see what I'm saying? I'm collecting it all
Yeah.
and going, there might be a principle here of being like, well, what if you're chivalrous? What if you pick up the guitar? What if you pick up the paintbrush? Regardless of what the AI does, regardless of how the society tells you we should do, open the door for the people.
Yeah.
Play the guitar at 10 years old. You might not ever be able to beat the AI. They might spit in your face, call you misogynist for opening up a door, but it's for the sake of it, for the sake
Mhm.
of creating the world that you want to live in. and maybe it helps you.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't do anything for anyone you open the door for, but it changes your soul. What if it
Right.
affects the way you think about the world around you? All right, sorry, that was a big rant, but that
No,
I'm
no, no,
tying it
no.
all together.
Yeah,
How
no,
do
no.
you
I
feel
think
about that?
you tied it together very, very well. This is where I think a lot of people who consider themselves libertarian tend to fail. Is that there are two ends of this, and this is something else
Okay.
that Jordan Peterson has laid out. Is that freedom does come with responsibility, and I do believe that libertarianism brought to its extreme conclusion of the ultimate freedom is the ultimate responsibility. It's
Oh
not
yeah,
going to look
yeah,
like where you get to just do whatever you want and you can go drunk driving and then
yeah.
there's no consequences. In fact, I think the consequences are going to be more harsh. There's just not going to be a
Well,
government
they
gun
should
doing
be.
it. But
They
yeah,
should.
once again, they should be because the social expectation is there for you. And this
Exactly.
is what I kind of see as duty, right? Like when I think about the way that I exercise, the way that I play music,
Mm,
the way that I strive to treat my wife in a honorable and a good way, that is my duty. That is part of who I am. This isn't, just because I believe this and because this leads to this is what I have to do to bring about the most prosperous life for the people that mean the most to me. And this is the way that
yeah,
people should look at libertarianism is that these values are going to lead you to the life and the society that you want to see. And even if you don't see it in your lifetime, you still put your soul and your effort out there to bring about that world, and your effort matters. And it's
yeah.
I think it's Alexander Solzhenitsyn that laid out the or that said the quote that the line of good and evil runs through every single human heart.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so it's upon us to move it more towards the good rather than the bad. And that's where I believe this responsibility comes in, where you should pay for the first date, right?
Yeah.
And if you do find somebody that you absolutely love and adore, you
Did
should
you
do your
say
best to treat them
pay for the
well.
first date? Did you say pay for the first date?
Yeah, I do believe
That's
men
what I
should
thought.
pay for the first date.
I think so too. But I like the idea that you just took Solzhenitsyn, the heart, the line of good and evil runs straight to the heart,
Mhm.
and you're like, but the clearest, easiest avenue, pay for the first date. Like I
Mhm.
love that you took that and was like
Right.
small steps.
Mhm.
Like it's not
Yeah.
like, yeah, sign up for the war, go kill people in another country. You're like, no, what if the lot, and Tolkien talks about this. Um, the way that he talks about the way to defeat evil, to defeat Sauron. It's not the big wars. It's a small. He was talking about the hobbits. It's a small
Mhm.
everyday man who does his everyday duties. That's
Mhm.
what holds back the evil. And so it's anyway. Sorry, you said that. Now it sparked a thing in me. I was like, I love that. I love the idea that people always think like it's a fight and we got to fight good and evil. And like
Mhm.
sometimes fighting good and evil is just love your wife. You
Yeah.
know, pay your
Well,
bills.
it's really
Jordan Peterson, make your bed. Like it's that. Sometimes that is the good that holds back the evil. And I think we see this in our culture world every day. I look at people and go like, they're not culture. I mean,
Mhm.
Jordan Peterson's not a warrior. He says some weird stuff on Twitter sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
dude, you're out of lane, dude. You could have been fine just being like, hey, make your bed. Like, like,
Mhm.
okay, Bucko.
Yeah.
Like you'd have been fine just doing that. You don't have to tell, a model she's ugly to get points. Like, I understand, but you might be stepping into a category that's not, maybe that's not for you. It might just
Mhm.
but not be your thing. But doing what he does well is great.
Right.
And I think everyone has that. I'm sorry, I'm ranting again, but I love
It's
what you
okay.
just said
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people think the culture war, or they think just right and wrong. Sometimes it's daunting. And I think about that in my own life. And like sometimes like I have a podcast and how often should I talk about, like how often should we bring up transing the kids with every artist I have on
Mhm.
the watercolor stuff? Like, let's not, I don't have to
Yeah.
do this all the time. But in my own heart, I'm like, well, I do want to not ignore the world crumbling around me. And
Mhm.
and sometimes just being a good artist, just painting a cool Spider-Man painting might be a small step to being like, well, this guy seems like he's normal. Maybe I'll listen to him. And then they hear me say something like, oh, how about you open the door for everybody, old
Mhm.
people, young people? And so it's stuff like that. Anyway, that was a long rant, but I love what you said about, I still I think of that all the time. The line between good and evil runs through everybody, but it's the small things
Yeah.
like pay for the first date, you idiot.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, sorry. Keep
Yeah, no,
going,
dude,
dude.
you're good. No, absolutely. Part of the reason why I like the way that some of the Manosphere guys lay out paying for the first aid is that it establishes a frame that you're willing to kind of lead, right?
Yeah.
And this is where I think another area where some libertarians tend to fail too is that people aren't going to just convert to our ideas, right? You could have one-on-ones with people, but I mean that's like a lifetime project that's going to take a very, very long time. But what I think a lot of
Yeah.
people tend to look for is leaders. So what we need is people who are
True.
willing to, once again, do their duty in their community and be leaders and live by these values and be people that other people respect in order for people to have relationship capital with us, right? So over time, you're going to build a relationship with people and they're going to trust you. So therefore, once they trust you, then they're more likely to trust your ideas. Well, if they see that, and not to pat myself on the back, but I'm a musician, I'm an athlete, a podcast host. I do all these other things. I'm a mechanic for a living. I have a good relationship with all my family, including both my
Yeah.
step parents and my parents.
Very cool.
This puts me as a certain member in the community. And then also when I was in college, I graduated top of my class. Okay, then I'm a libertarian, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All those things,
Secondary.
then I'm a libertarian. Because
Yeah.
if I just lead with the political, that puts people's guards up immediately, especially if they don't know you. Because the political stuff can be very, very daunting for a lot of people just because people have so many assumptions baked in, especially when I see people like gravitating towards saying they're right wing or left wing.
Yeah.
Now, that means so many different things to so many different people. You shouldn't always lead with that. So this is another reason why I really like music and art and stuff like that, because it's
Yeah.
apolitical and it's
Yeah.
something that everybody can rally around and enjoy together. And then you start those relationships there, and then you can worry about the political stuff later. But you guys agree on this one thing, so let's enjoy this together. And then if you get into the political stuff, they're already more likely to be a little bit more open to you and say like, hey, we may disagree here, but maybe we could work on something together, and maybe we could find what this disagreement is, and maybe you'll move an inch my way, I'll move an inch your way, or maybe you'll move 6 inches my way and you'll realize where you were wrong, or maybe I'm the dumb son of a bitch and I have to move closer towards you.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think political dialogue is about. I don't think it's about just coming up to people and telling them I'm a libertarian and this is why you should be too. I think it's about having a relationship with people or being a good leader, and then the ideas come secondary. At least that's kind of the way that I see it.
No, I actually think you're spot on. I would add to that, and I've had conversations. I try to actually space my libertarian guests out because the last thing I want to do is be another libertarian podcast. Like we
Right.
don't have enough. But that's actually not all the full truth. And I actually talked to Larry Sharp about this.
Mhm.
Actually, I don't know if I went too much into depth with him on this one, but my question with him, he's a big libertarian. Like he was the first person I voted for because I live in New York. And,
Yeah,
his
he's
first-
I tweet about him all the time. He is just one of the greatest living people on the face of
I
the
love
planet.
that
He's
guy.
just absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that guy. He's easy to talk to too. And the fact that he was on my podcast was still like, did you not read the email? Like you should have. But he was super gracious, but I got a chance to talk to him. I was like, I've all my friends in my circle are artists, and none of them are libertarian. None of them are Republican. They're very much Democratic socialists. They're all like hardcore into activism.
Mhm.
And I was questioning. I was like, well, it doesn't make any sense to me because I have an art gallery. Like I make money off sales, like capital. I understand like it's a basic form of capitalism. It's not what they're talking about, but it
Yeah.
still doesn't make sense that you'd want the state to pay for you to do the art because I like the struggle behind it. But regardless, on to the next point. I've had conversations with libertarians who do like podcast, and they're every time I talk to a libertarian, they're like, well, this policy is coming through. We need to get this guy elected, and this is the policy. And I always sit back and go, well, what about the culture? Because a lot of libertarians are not involved in culture at all. And me as an artist, like that's really all I care about. Because I like the weird Breitbart thing, politics is downstream from culture. I get it.
Mhm.
And culture is downstream from art. It's like, well, why aren't libertarians paying more attention to art then?
Mhm.
And that's the thing. That's why I like having people like you on, where people are artists. They're not just like, well, who's the next person running, and let's talk to them about the policies. I get it. Like that's a whole thing. That's not my cup of tea. Let everybody talk about that. But I would love to see more libertarians dive more into art. Like I got a friend who writes books. I've had him on the podcast. He just writes fiction novels. He's a libertarian, and he writes, and there's libertarian under themes, and I'm love that. It's
Yeah.
the same thing as the Daily Wire. Like we're gonna put out kids shows. They're not overly Republican. They're just traditional. It's like, oh, okay. Well, so now we're seeing like, well, maybe people pay attention to. I would like to make good art, and then people go, this guy has a podcast. He talks to artists. He loves this stuff. I don't know what his political views are, but every once in a while he has a guy like Kyle on, and I find out, oh, he's just kind of like a normal person from 2008, which makes me like him even more. Like that's where I'm going for, like that's what I'm aiming for. But I think that's what people are like, well, because I've had family members go like, David's a libertarian, and I'm a terrible libertarian at that. I'm not very good at it. But they're like, well, what do you think about this? And I'm like, this is pretty simple. Like, it's just theft, you know, like it's just,
Mhm.
but I get into that part. But yeah, it's easy conversation. People start to be a little bit more inclined to be like, I understand freedom is more responsibility. What do we do about the people? What do we do about the people who can't fend for themselves? Is it, you're like, well, I'm an artist. I'm easily empathetic because that's the
Mhm.
group I run into. Like, I'm not just a policy and get it done. And this is what I'm an artist. Like, I care about the way people think. That this part of my living is to communicate the way they feel and the way I feel and bring them together. So it shines a light on libertarianism to not make them think they're just policy and growing their own garden in the middle of nowhere. You start to
Right.
see like, oh, these people are well rounded. Like
Yeah.
they do all kind. They're mechanics, they're artists, they're guitar players, they're musicians, they're contractors. They do all the things, and that's what I think. I think it's important. Anyway, that was a long rant. I like what you do because it symbolizes what I do when it comes to policies is secondary. Like
Mhm.
I mean not policy. Politics for me is secondary. Like
Right.
it's the least interesting thing about me is
Mhm.
my politics that I believe. The most interesting is like, what do I do? Who do I care for? Who do I love?
Mhm.
What do I think about? And it just so happens to be in tied with the ton of responsibility that comes to being a libertarian.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
one interesting thing that I kind of realized just as you were saying that was I really didn't talk politics a lot when I first got to the job that I'm at now. And it's kind of funny. If I'm asked, I'll talk about it, but I
yeah,
never bring it up first. But
neither.
I noticed that my coworkers will kind of start to poke around and ask me about it. And I have a lot to say, but once
Yeah,
again, I'm not going to spew every single political belief of mine on your lap if you don't care to hear it, because then
yeah,
what good was that? We could have spent time, better. There was better time spent doing other things
yeah.
rather than me just gargling my political jargon onto you. So, and this is largely because they respect me as a person and they understand that I'm somebody that, is reliable, trustworthy, and will be there if they need it.
That's it.
So, like I said, I think just these people who think that they could just be active in the political, I think that's a losing game. And I think that you will win people over who are geared that way as well. But I don't believe that's the masses. I believe the masses just pay, a little bit of attention every here and there. In 4 years, they go pull a lever for somebody that they
Yeah,
seem to like, and then that's kind of like the most they dabble in politics. And they may read the occasional news story, but other than that, they're not diving in every single day. They're not doing research. They're not publishing articles. They just don't have that much interest because I mean it's a lot. It's stressful to kind of think about this stuff all day every day. So for
dude, it
me,
is. It is.
yeah, I'm sure you're the
It's
same
hard.
way. Sometimes you just gotta look at art or listen to music or something like that, and just not worry about political stuff for a week
I
or
just
two.
follow. I just follow your Twitter, and I'm like, oh, what's going on today? What's Kyle tweeting about today? Uh, Yeah, but I totally and this is a weird thing to admit, and I don't mind it because
Mm.
I'm a bit of a simpleton when it came to politics. Like the first time I voted was in 2018, and it was for Larry Sharpe. So, dude, to be honest, I was like, I didn't know about libertarianism till Ron Swanson on Parks and Rec, and I was
Mhm.
like, whatever that is, whatever that thing is, I like that. And that's art, dude. He's not even a real libertarian. It's just art. It's just portraying an idea through something that made it communicatable to me. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't know what this is, but now I'm learning that everything he says seems to be absolutely makes sense. And that's just a form of art. So through Parks and Recreation, the
Mhm.
TV show, and Ron
Yeah.
Swanson, I literally voted because I mean, obviously, I was like, whatever he is, I'm voting, and I actually did research. But after I didn't know it existed, man. I knew like the
Mhm.
Green Party and Ross Perot and stuff like that coming up, but I never knew like there was actual movement behind like, hey, freedom requires responsibility. The more freedom, the more responsibility. It's a trade off. It's the
Mhm.
Thomas Sowell thing. There's no solution. It's just a trade off. The
Right.
more responsibility you have, the more freedom you get. The less freedom you have, the less responsibility. How do you want to live? Where do you want to pull the world to?
Mhm.
And not that thing. Obviously, it was a lot to come from Ron Swanson, but Ron
Mhm.
Swanson led me there, obviously. And then I
Yeah.
voted for Larry Sharpe. And
Mhm.
then that's literally I'm having a podcast that involves a lot of libertarians based on my own ideals of being like this seems to fit well, and it seems to be a smart way forward. Um,
Right.
yeah, man. I think what really is the saving grace. Let's talk about two people real quick. I don't know how you feel
Sure.
about them. How do you feel about Michael Malice and Dave Smith?
Um,
Give me your
I've
full. You tell me whatever you want. I don't know, man. They're
Michael
not my best
Malice is
friends. I'm
yeah.
calling Michael right now and tell him what I don't know. They're not my friends. I don't know. I don't know who they
Uh,
are.
Michael Malice kind of annoys me.
Okay.
I really don't like him.
You hate
Um,
Jews. Ah, see, I know.
yes, yes,
I'm just
exactly.
playing. I'm just fucking.
No, Michael Malice is he's kind of he carries a lot of water for the neoconservatives and
Okay.
Zionists as well, which is kind of surprising. Being an anarchist, that his foreign policy takes
Yeah.
and his take on Israel are pretty bad. But
Okay.
when it comes to like his understanding of anarchism and history surrounding that, I think it's very interesting. I do think he's knowledgeable, but he's just always bothered me. But Dave Smith, I have a great admiration for Dave Smith,
I do too.
and I was actually thinking about this today. He tweeted out the one day saying that like libertinism, as in this idea of free love and this
Mm.
degeneracy,
Dude,
isn't
is that what
necessarily.
libertine is? I keep
Yeah,
hearing it. I have no idea what it is. So it's the
yeah,
free love, anything goes kind of thing.
yeah, kind of like
Okay.
this, hippie commune of free sex and free love, and
So
you
would
know,
hold on before you go because you're educating me right now.
sure.
Is the opposite of that conservatarian?
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
there's obviously room in between, but I would say the libertine is more just kind of like this degeneracy where people see
Okay.
traditional values as like bad or something like that, and then obviously the inverse. Um,
Okay.
Dave
I
Smith,
didn't know. I was just figuring that
I
out.
I feel like Dave Smith made it cool to be a conservative libertarian, like kind of like how Ron Paul made it okay to be an anti-war Republican.
Yeah.
Dave
Yeah.
Smith made
For
it
sure.
okay to be a socially conservative libertarian.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and he
So I'm
did
okay
that.
now because
Yeah,
I think I fall in that group because everyone
yeah,
was like this whole music. I was like, well, I might be coming from a traditional conservative background.
mm,
All this just makes sense to me.
right,
I don't have a dog in this libertarian fight because libertarians always argue with each other, and I don't really
yeah.
have. I feel like I'm an outsider just eating popcorn. Like I don't.
Mm.
We'll see where this goes.
You're probably
But
better
yeah,
off.
I think I am. But yeah, that's. Thank you for breaking that down for me. So
Mm,
Dave Smith is made conservatarian cool again. I like that. I'm okay
mm,
with that
yeah.
because he doesn't seem like a conservative at all. um,
If you look at his personal life, that's where he's
maybe
much
that's what it
more
is.
socially conservative, and that's kind of the way that I look at conservatism.
Okay.
And perhaps it is a little bit my error that sometimes I do use conservative and Republican interchangeably because we should kind of think of conservatives as more. Um, a social value, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
conservative is kind of like, hey, I'm going to be responsible for my duties and I'm going to treat my wife a certain way. I'm going to be with this one person. We're going to have a nuclear family. And this is the way that we see a most prosperous society is by kind of leading with these values.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that like only Republicans are conservative. So there's, Democrats that I know that live a very conservative life as well. There's a lot of nuance, but yeah, I would definitely say Dave Smith as a person is definitely more socially conservative, and then obviously politically he's very libertarian,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I would say he's probably like my north star politically, where I agree with him on probably an overwhelming majority of things. The only area where I see him lacking, it seems to be his knowledge on China, even though like I just feel like he just doesn't know. And if you told him kind of the stuff about China from a libertarian angle, he'd be good on it right away. But I just feel like he just doesn't read into
Yeah.
that. And I'm not criticizing for him. I'm not criticizing him for that, but I feel like it's just
Well, I'm
something
gonna
that he haven't
tell
looked
him.
into.
I don't know if you know I'm texting him right now. Kyle said you suck at China.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, dude, I'm with you on that one. Like I said, I'm not really in the libertarian circle, especially on libertarian Twitter. I'm not really there. I'm like an outsider. I'm a fly on the wall most of the time. I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, I totally agree with this. I'll retweet it, but God forbid anyone come to me with questions, because I will not give a good answer. It'll probably be something off the wall. But what I
Mhm.
do like is because if there was something like, say, if someone came to me and they're like, hey, you're a libertarian, what do you think about war? I'm like, just check out Scott Horton.
Yeah.
That shove that off on him. He'll
Mhm.
solve it for you. Like, how do you feel about the culture stuff? Well, here's Dave Smith, or and there's a lot of people. How do you feel about policy? There's Ron Paul. Like, these are
Mhm.
people that you can bring in, and these are people who are alive. We're not even talking about the dead people in the books they write. And so I like that part when it comes to policy and being able to kind of lean on different people. Because I mean, Michael Malice, I would still love the idea that it's tossed around of him being like Speaker of the House, like, or not Speaker
Yeah.
of the House, Press Secretary. Like,
Right.
I love that idea. He's such a good
Mhm.
time, and I think that good time and being able to be quick on your feet and doing. The way he is a comedian at the same time and knows somewhat politics is pretty cool.
Mm.
What I do think, tell me what you think about this, Kyle, because since
Sure.
I'm venturing off into the culture war area, even with the podcast, and I hate to do that, but it's going to happen because I'm having a hard time not talking about this stuff.
Right.
Um, 3 years ago, when I was like, well, I think I'm a libertarian, all my friends were in the art world, which are all Democrats, and I'm from Texas, so my family's kind of Republican and very conservative, and I can. I was a bit of an imbat. I can run. I understand what they're doing. I understand the parties, like the
Mhm.
quote unquote Big Ten parties. I get it.
Yeah.
And I always found myself kind of in the middle. Like I'm not really. I like this thing and not socially
Yeah.
conservative, and economically, what or vice versa. But this whole woke thing, dude, um, it's kind of flipped flipped things over onto where, like, that whole meme of being like, well, it's just normal, and then you pushed me over into a Republican camp.
Mhm.
I would probably be less conservative if it wasn't for this weird woke stuff. And I know, like, how do you define woke? Like, that's a constant thing being pulled up. It's kind of like, and you ever heard that thing where people like, there's this big, I forgot what court case it was. We're like, well, how do you define pornography? And the one guy was like, I can't define it, but I can tell you when I see it. Like, like it's not, and that's the kind of thing. It's like, well,
Yeah.
and I personally can define woke. I think it's a religion. I think it's
Mm.
easily a cultist religion, based on a ton of stuff. But um, I don't think I'm educated enough to be able to define this well. But I can tell you that the more the world spins off this postmodern, uh, all morals are relative, free based, whatever
Mm.
goes is fine. We're just pulling you that slippery slope thing that everyone's like, that's not real.
Yeah.
Well, it is real, and it's happening in front of you. That thing has really made me more of a conservative libertarian,
Mhm.
to the point where, do you really want me to become a Republican? Like, I will vote for Trump. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll vote for
Mhm.
this guy so fast. And I had this conversation with Larry, and Larry's like, well, it's everything the politics does is if you don't vote for this guy, the world's gonna end. I'm sitting back going like, oh my god, the world's gonna end, dude. Like, we're
Mhm.
we're about to get in World War III. And it makes you want to step back and lose your balance of being like, well, obviously I shouldn't just vote down ballot R, but dude, this woke stuff is throwing me off, man. Even as a libertarian, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, tell me I'm wrong, dude. Tell me the lunatics aren't running the asylum at this point in time. And I love the fact that people have, hey, I get it. You don't quite know who you are. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna yell at you for that. But dude, stop teaching kids. Like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
take some time off. Like, you don't need to do. Anyway, I've got some strong issues. How do you feel about that stuff? Because that's making me a little bit more conservative than it is libertarian. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I completely understand. And I empathize with that. I know people, especially with parents, definitely feel a lot
Yeah, sure.
stronger than I do because your incentive is that much higher
But
because
dude,
you're like indoctrinating
they're
people's
touching a
children.
nerve. That's like
Yeah.
literally your operation. You're buzzing
Mhm.
it, dude. You're hitting a nerve, and that's not
Right.
a good thing, dude. That's not a good. Anyway, sorry I interrupted you, but it's a serious thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree. Um, I get why people have this, knee jerk reaction to say like we have to quash this at all costs, and
Yeah,
I sometimes tend to agree because it's like when you're going after people's kids, the most vulnerable population in the entire world, like they need to be protected. And this is a little bit of a problem for libertarians where they're not willing to necessarily say, like, hey, maybe we should have preferences when we, with this government that we have, where, like, if they're going to function at all, maybe they should at least serve to protect children and
yeah,
make sure that we're not exposing them to harmful things or putting, naked trans adults in front of them. Like, this stuff is clearly wrong. And I think everybody of sane mind would agree that this stuff is wrong, and
yeah,
whatever we could do to stop it, I think is a net positive. And I do think like this idea of woke is based on the idea of equity, where everybody's equal, and blanks, and also the idea of blank slate equalism,
yeah,
where everybody is just, starts off as a complete total blank slate, and then you kind of work them from there. But the fact
yeah,
is that people of different races, people of different families, people of different cultures, all will turn out different. And that same person from the same day isn't going to be equal to himself from day to day. You're going to
Yeah.
have good days, you're going to have bad days, but people across races, creeds, IQs, you name it, aren't equal. And that's okay, because there's some things that you're going to be good at that I suck at. There's going to be some things that you suck at that I'm good at. We're not all equal, but that's kind of the beautiful part of libertarianism overall, is that
Yeah.
you can kind of have this division of labor and decentralization where you have communities where you have people who are specialized in different things. But even as it stands today, you could still have that where people are good at certain things, people aren't. We
Yeah.
see this in like when it comes to libertarian, you have your foreign policy guru, Scott Horton,
That's it.
Dave DeCamp, Pat McFarlane, Connor Freeman, Kyle Anzalone. I keep up with these
Yeah.
guys a lot.
Yeah,
You
me too.
have your more blue collar guys like myself, like Reed Coverdale, who are
Yeah.
kind of, busting our knuckles, doing our jobs every single day. You have the artist guys like me and yourself who kind of put our art there our art out there for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
world to
I
see,
gotcha.
or even Eric July, who's like making comics and stuff
Love
like
that
this.
guy.
So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So you have all these people who do who serve different purposes within our movement. I really think that's going to be the best way to defeat this kind of wokeist ideology. And if it does continue to overtake institutions, then hey, maybe having someone like a DeSantis that comes in and quashes it, maybe we have to do something like that if it's to the point where we are losing our, I don't want to say our institutions, because that sounds so just
It does
kind of
sound
like
rough.
our
Yeah.
democracy. But if they're coming after our
Our
children, then I
democracy
think
is in
it's
danger. I don't know if
right.
you know this, Kyle.
Yeah, because of January 6th.
Because
Um,
because of January 6th.
yeah,
Just
but
like,
no, I think it's perfectly okay to use the heavy hand of government if it means protecting our children and
yeah.
protecting our property from those who would seek to steal it off of us, by means of seeking out equality. Because
Yeah.
essentially, at the end of the day, that is kind of Maoist communism, right?
Yeah, I think there's a weird play in the government and that even that aspect of what you're talking about, the heavy hand of government to protect the kids. Um, I agree, and I think actually the government might be a little bit more gracious than the parents. And so
Mhm.
not only are they protecting the kids, they're protecting the offenders. Because had this been even a hardcore libertarian stance,
Mhm.
and you pull that drag queen stuff in front of a libertarian's kid,
Mhm.
the government might not be there to help you.
Right.
So as much as it is, the big government might protect your kids, it might protect the offenders too, because I know a lot of libertarians wouldn't even let, they just don't have the patience. And
Right.
and so let's just leave it there. I like, man, and there's a theological term of dealing with like the value of people. Because even this is just a weird like biblical lesson. Either way, just hear me out.
Mhm.
And so there's multiple ways of looking at the imago Dei, which is the image of God. Everyone's made in the image of God, and there's different ways of looking at men and women
Mhm.
and their relationship together. There's egalitarian, which they're equal in value and equal in servitude. And
Mhm.
then there's complementarian, which is a totally different thing. It's they're equal in
Yeah.
value but different in servitude. Women are different than men. Men are different than women. This is where I tend to land. There's different aspects that men do that are important in certain aspects, like war. Let's just be honest. Men are a little bit better at war than women. Maybe not so
Just a
much
little.
gossip or like
Yeah.
spy. Like I think women. I'm with the Black Widow Marvel
Yeah.
thing. I think Black Widow spies would be better women because men are dumb, and so I think this kind of dynamic.
Mm.
They're going to be better at shooting people. Women are better at working situations out. But that's complementarian. They're both equal in value. That's the imago
Mm.
Dei. They're both made in the image of God, but their roles they play are different, and they shouldn't
Right.
be. They're not valued the same way. And I think this complementarian thing where they complement each other, that's where it comes from. Instead of this equity concept of being like, well, everyone's the same and everyone has the same platform and everyone can do all the things the same way. Like, well,
Mm.
obviously you're an idiot because that's not true. And as much as you
Yeah.
tell me that is true, or I'm a bigot for thinking that it's not true, it's not going to change the fact that it's just not true. And you can lie. You can lie to everyone. And some people might fall for it.
Mhm.
And that's fine, but it's just not, at the end of the day, it's just not gonna hit the rubber. Like it's
Mm.
just not gonna make traction.
Right.
And it may with certain societies, but when it comes to farming or when it comes to like most libertarian things, like I mean, pretty hands-on people. I like that complementarian thing when it comes to politics, and this is
Mm.
where I think the libertarian long rant come to an end. This is where I think libertarians succeed the most, because
Mm.
all my favorite libertarians are really good at what they do. Like if I think foreign policy, I think Daniel DeCamp or Scott Horton. Like these are the people I'm like, well, I don't dude, I don't know where to think about this stuff, but I know
Yeah.
who to turn to, who
Hmm.
seem to have it on. If I went to Culture War, or if I, think about art, Eric July, like there's a ton of libertarians out there who are not just good at being libertarian, they're just good at what they do.
Right.
And then they just so happen to be libertarian. And
Hmm.
I think if Democrats really got on that, if there were like, or if Republicans were just like, what if we focused on, oh, so let me end this here. I know this is a long rant, dude. I'm
No,
so
that's
sorry.
okay. Yeah, man.
So C.S. Lewis talk, and I bring this up all the time on the podcast. I think I do, or I just do it in my head. C.S. Lewis talks about this. He talks about other Christian writers because C.S. Lewis, he obviously wrote, Chronicles of Narnia, and wrote a bunch
Mm.
of fiction. He wrote some theology like Mere Christianity, but didn't write a lot. He wrote a lot of fiction. And he was talking about the idea of like Christian writers. He was like,
Mm.
the last thing the world needs is more Christian books written by Christian writers. What they need is a lot of good books written by Christian writers. His basic
Mm.
point was being like, write good books and be Christian while doing it. And that'll lead more people to
Mm.
Christ than just writing books about Christ. Because if you were good at fiction, people would read it and go, who's this guy? And realize, oh, this is where he bases all of this stuff off.
Mhm.
So you can be a good guitarist, be a good artist, be a good musician, be a good at foreign policy, be a good comedian. And then when people are like, I like this guy. And then when they
Mhm.
listen to a podcast, oh my God, he's libertarian. Why is he because he's so smart? I like this guy. Why? I hate libertarians. Why do I like this guy?
Mhm.
Then your movement might move forward. Again, maybe not so much the policy, but the people. That people thing, dude. If we had more libertarians who did more cool stuff, then we might be fine, dude. I'd be fine. It still sounds like I'm shilling for the Libertarian Party. I'm not even sure they let me in there yet. They haven't let me in there yet, but I'll get there. But what do you think about that, man? We'll end it on that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's definitely kind of something that I've tried to beat into people's heads as well. Is that it was kind of an idea I was laying out earlier that we do need to be leaders, and that's going to attract people to our ideas. And I think the way that you laid it out with C.S. Lewis there was perhaps way better than I could have ever laid it out. You need to paint the ideas in a way that isn't just throwing them right in people's faces, but you need to kind of plant the seeds
Yeah,
through the ideas, as
yeah,
in like you need to paint a picture and tell a story to somebody that may be libertarian in nature, but it's not explicitly libertarian.
I
And then
agree.
that leads people down the path, and then they find out who you are, and then they can get inspired from your inspirations and from your ideas, and then from there they may become libertarians.
Yeah,
And anybody that claims to have the certain answer or like the one ticket to anything really, like anytime you hear anybody telling you that like just cut out this food, do this exercise for health or for muscle, do this one trick to make money, do this one trick to change the world into Ancapistan overnight, they're
yeah, yeah,
lying to you, because
yeah.
the matter of the fact is that for a lot of this stuff we don't know what works universally, but we could tell you, we could point to stuff that says like, hey, this moves us in a good direction, this seems productive. We could just look at that and then hope that repeating that can work. And then if it doesn't, then we'll reassess and, aim and fire in another direction.
That's
But
it, dude.
anybody that believes that they have the one answer to everything, they're not any kind of serious person. They're an ideologue, and we should treat them that way. And,
Yeah,
take the good, leave the bad. But just remember that the world's a very, very nuanced and complicated place. And there's many, many different ways to skin a cat. And the way that health may look to me may look different to you, and the way that you get to your best liberty may look very, very different from person to person as well.
yeah, man, dude. I love that. That's spot on. I totally agree with this. I didn't know, since we haven't actually talked. I didn't know how much I like that we are. I mean, I'm saying this, you'd be like, this guy's an idiot. I don't associate with him at all.
Dude, you're good.
But yeah,
I've
dude.
enjoyed the conversation.
I hope so, man. I hope you enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it a ton. Will you tell everyone that's listening and watching where to follow you at and your podcast and all that stuff? Will you give them that info?
For sure. Yeah. So I'm on Twitter. That's where I'm most active, at Kyle Matovcik. That's KyleMatovcik. The podcast is called In Liberty and Health. Um, I'm not sure when you're going to air this, but I normally do 2 episodes a week.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. I do
the week
one,
that
so it'll be like
cool.
Thursday. So
Okay, cool. Yeah. The week that we're recording right now, it's March 7th. Tomorrow I'm going to be airing an episode with Mike Jackman,
okay, cool.
one of the Jackman brothers. And
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
enough, we actually talked about music and foreign policy as well,
Very
which was
cool.
really, really cool because he's a musician as well. So yeah, I do 2 podcasts there a week. I play in a band called A Common Crown. You can find us everywhere if you go to acommoncrown.com. If you're in the Ohio, Pennsylvania area, we're going to be playing in Akron, Ohio at the Vortex on, I think it's March. Let me make sure I got the state right. March 10th, and then on the 21st of this month, we'll also be opening for Saliva, if
Oh,
anybody
for
knows who
real?
they are. Yes.
Yeah,
And
dude. I
then,
know who doesn't know what saliva is?
not
Maybe
everybody.
maybe people who are
Yeah.
12 and under. No, I
Yeah.
mean saliva's been around for a minute.
For sure, yeah, and then
Yeah, very cool.
May 7th we're opening for Lita Ford as well. So we got
Okay.
some cool shows coming up this year, and
Yeah,
hopefully
dude.
some new music for everybody. But yeah, Kyle Matovcik on Twitter, Common Crown's the band, and Liberty Health is the podcast. And then I'm also on Facebook. So if people are on there, feel free to send me a friend request and shoot me a message if you like any of my stuff. And yeah, if anybody ever needs anything, if everybody's curious about health and fitness, political stuff, or just wants to shoot the shit, I'm always available.
Yeah, dude. Hey, thanks for coming on the podcast. I enjoyed this talk immensely. I
Absolutely.
feel like we probably could have went for like another hour and a half, dude. Um, Dipping into this, I rarely do I get a chance to talk about the culture and art
Mm,
together and how they kind of mix together and how what to do with art in our world today.
for sure.
Especially if you're in this whole this conundrum of being an artist
Mm,
and dealing with. I mean, AI. We touched on AI. I'm still world about this. I don't know what to do with it,
mm.
man. AI is so much more talented than I am. I have to figure out what I'm going to do.
I
Anyway,
know the
man.
feeling.
Yeah, it's strange. But anyway, dude, I enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully, you enjoyed it too. I'm going to toss you off and then sign off real quick. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining the Pardonable podcast. This was a great conversation. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. I think I might try to have Kyle back on to talk more culture stuff. I think I'm going to dip a little bit more into the culture. It seems to be somewhat important. Honestly, it's been something I've been thinking about for a while now, and it's been on my mind of how the world's going, man. It's not that it's like the world's ending, but it kind of feels like it all the time. It's not one thing. It's just every year. It's like, what disaster are we dealing with now? And maybe it's been like that for decades, and I've just now picked up on it. But it definitely seems worrisome. And so I'd like to be a part of moving the needle forward, especially for young artists and stuff like that. I don't want to. I don't want people to think like, well, I'd like for a great future, except for we're about to blow up, or a train's going to derail, or the next president's going to lock us into concentration camps. Let's just not avoid that. And so I might dip into a little bit more conversations with people, and try to space my libertarian friends out and get a few other people in there because I got a lot of libertarian friends. And so you might hear a lot more of this. But if you're going to follow me, please do at Pardonable Art on Twitter. You can find me at Pardonable Art on Instagram and the Pardonable Podcast on Instagram as well, to kind of see updates and shows. And if you will, please like and subscribe to my new YouTube channel, youtube.com at Pardonwill. Same with Rumble, rumble.com at Pardonwill. But anyway, hopefully you guys have a great week, and I will see you back here next time. Bye.